In this video, we're going to go over how to use the standard rate of change and the Connors RSI in the ultimate trend following strategy. First thing we're going to do is, once we've added the strategy to the chart, is click on our gear icon here. And first thing to do, we don't really have to change anything with style for this. However, we're going to go to our properties tab, and you just want to set the amount of initial capital you're using to trade, what your base currency is, and what your order size is per trade. If you want to use a fixed amount, or if you want to use maybe a percentage of equity so you can position size. And let's say maybe you want to use 100%. You can set that to 100% instead of a fixed position size. You can use whatever you like. There's no pyramiding in these strategies, so not built in anyways, so we won't have that. Then you'll set your commission. We'll keep this at a 0.1 for a market, for a stock trade where we have Tesla right now that we're trading up here on a 1 hour chart. And we're going to recalculate the strategy on every tick. Okay, so now we've changed our properties and capital management. We're going to go over now to the defaults. And first thing we're going to want to do is set our time frame of when we want to trade. So if we're wanting to look for trades between 2010 and any day in the future, we could set this to, right now we have the year 3000, but it could be any day in the future, 2050 or whatever you want to do. If you want to look for trades between a certain time frame, maybe, let's say for example, if we're on the daily chart here, and we just want to look for trades or see how well it performed, our strategy performs between 2018 and 2019. You can certainly check it out there like that. And then you can see your performance down here. Not too good for that time period, so we have to tweak our settings a little bit. But anyways, for this example, we're going to go to 2010, and we're just going to go to a date far in the future. That way, in real time, as more information comes in, our strategy will keep appearing. And let's go back to an hour time frame. Okay, so now first thing we're going to do in our strategy, after we set our time, let's also set our time zone. And you can see here, this is going to be different for you depending on where you're at, but I'm in UTC -7, so I want to make that match. And now, if I want to start off by using the standard rate of change as the trigger indicator instead of the whole MA, it's always whole MA by default, it's the first one, but if you want to use standard rate of change, you just switch it over. And you're also going to see these default settings here. This whole MA period length is only for the whole moving average, so this will not affect standard rate of change or Connors RSI. Doesn't affect either of those. So we're going to be in the standard rate of change, and we can see here that, you know, maybe we need to change your default settings a little bit. Maybe we want to look at a longer time period. So maybe let's go to like a 210 versus a 200. Okay, that actually sort of becoming more profitable. But you can actually change this to any setting you want and try different things. The max level is 4,999. It's Tradingview limitation, but that is the farthest you can go. 2113 is default. Again, you can literally punch in any number in there and see what works for you. See what works for your trading style. So that's basically how that works for the rate of change length. Smoothing length, if we want to change that also we can. We can go to longer period. That may be too long. And something shorter. There we go. The shorter is actually working better than the default. So you can just tweak these settings and you can mix and match any combination you want, and you can see what works best for you. Maybe try it on different time frames, depending on how you trade, and see what works. And take some experimentation. These settings down here, and next to the hole of May, they don't affect the center rate of change. Doesn't matter what these are. The only thing you can use for center rate of change are these numbers to affect the length and the smoothing length. Now, if you want to use the Connor's RSI instead, then you just select Connor's RSI instead of the center rate of change of the hole of May. And now we're going to be using these settings under CRSI to affect the length and overbought and oversold levels. So first thing we're going to need to do is to click this on exit position on Connor's RSI signal. That way, when these overbought and oversold levels are hit, we're actually going to be entering and exiting trades. So now you see we're having trades appear on the screen. And now we can actually start playing with our settings here for the Connor's RSI. We can try different lengths, shorter and maybe longer, and experiment and just see what works for what you're trading. You can also change your rate of change length if you want to look for longer time periods. And it'll just take some experimentation, see, understand how the indicator works. You can look at it on YouTube or read some articles on our site or Investopedia. And once you find the settings that you like, the length, up, down length, the rate of change, the overbought and oversold levels, you can then create a trading system based on the Connor's RSI. So let's see, let's maybe for this one, there, let's go 100. These are just the default settings, 32100. That's usually default. We can go to more extreme. There we go. That was nice. We have a much higher overbought level. Then you just have to tweak with these and see what works for you. So that's how you use the Connor's RSI or the center rate of change. Just select the trigger indicator and then mess with your settings. And one isn't better than the other. It's all how you use them. So you just need to understand how the indicators work and then use them with your own settings and find what works for you. Now for the Connor's RSI and for the center rate of change. Put that back on for the Connor's RSI. If you're using center rate of change right now, I'll take this off. So right now we're using center rate of change based on these two settings. And it's actually the same thing if we're using Connor's RSI also, but if we want to set a stop loss, we can show stop level, use a stop loss. And now you'll see, for example, so we entered along here. And we're going to show the stop loss. We're going to 5% from the entry is where we want to place our stop. So you'll actually see here, we entered here, and then 5% underneath. It's hard to get it exact with this, but this is 5%. This is our stop loss. I actually like to change the look of the stop loss, and you can do that by style. And the second to last plot is actually your stop loss. I'm going to change it to a maroon and a thicker line. And now, you'll see how it appears nice on the chart. So we have a 5% stop loss for that entry right there. Now, if we were using Connor's RSI, the trigger indicator, same thing. Click on exit position and signal. Now we see that we entered along here with a 5% stop loss, entered a short here in profit from the long, put a 5% stop loss, got stopped out, That's stopped out. So you can see how that's working on the screen now. And for both of these, the Connors RSI or the center rate of change, you can adjust your percentage of your stop loss if you want to make it, maybe a percent, 5.5%, 5.99. You can make it whatever you like. You can even do it from the previous high or low or the previous trend, the previous trade. So the way the entry works is just from the entry, previous high or low. We'll take the previous candle high or low and put the stop loss from that. We'll make this say 7% or 10%. Not from the entry, but the previous candle. And then the previous trend high or low is now going to look at the previous trade. So the stop loss for this long is not going to be based on this short. This was the highest area of that trend, and that's 10% from there. And that's how the previous trend high or low works. And it'd do the same thing for the standard rate of change. So if I took Connors RSI off, sorry, I was on standard rate of change, but if I wanted to do it for the Connors RSI, so Connors RSI, we've got the X position on, and now our stop loss is from the previous high or low of the previous trade. So that's how the stop losses work. You can also use a Connors RSI stop loss if you want to be more adaptive to the markets. You can even use that together with stop loss, and whichever one happens first, whatever trigger happens, you'll get stopped out on. If you don't want to use a fixed percent, but you want to use an average true range as stop loss, you can do that also. And then you can also adjust this by any multiple you like. You can see that changing on the screen. Any length you like. It can't be 0. It's got to be at least 1. And there you go. And if you want to move your stop loss to break even as soon as you get in the profit, you can do that. So let me show you an example of when a trade gets into profit right away. Let's use maybe a stop loss of 10%. And let's see a good example here. Let me get out of the zoom. Can we get back to auto? There we go. Okay. Now I see the chart a little easier. Okay, we got Connors also. Let's take that off. Okay. The entry. That's why. Sorry, I kept messing that up. There we go. Okay, so we got stop loss, 10% from entry. Let's find one where we get into profit right away. Try to find maybe a long. Let's look. Okay, here's a good example. We open a long here. We immediately get into profit, and you can see our stop loss now went into right where our entry was. And now our stop loss is at break even, and we got taken out here on the new trade. But you can see the stop loss got moved to break even as soon as we got into profit, right there. These other ones where they don't get into profit first right away, the stop loss doesn't move to break even. Here's another good example. We entered here, we were in profit immediately, stop loss got moved up to here where our entry was. Okay, moving on to trailing stops. You can also use trailing stops. So let's apply that to the screen. You can use percentage, ticks, or pips on it. And this is adjustable any number you want. And you can use ticks or pips if you're trading stocks or Forex. If you want to use an average true range as a stop loss, as a trailing stop, you can do that also. You can see that actually working here, the ATR stop loss. Okay. And you can either use the ATR stop loss or the trailing stop. It's one or the other. You can't use them both at the same time. They won't work properly. So you either use the trailing stop or the ATR trailing stop. Using together will mess it up. So it's one or the other. It's either a fixed percent or an adaptive average true range. You can also use that with move stop to break even if your trade, if you want to move your stop to break even as soon as it gets there. So those trailing stops, the percentage based or the ATR trailing stop, can be used with either the fixed stop loss or the average true range stop loss. That's a pretty thorough overview of how the stop losses work. So again, you're just going to show the stop level and then choose your initial stop option if you want it to be a standard stop loss, Connor's RSI, or an average true range. And you could use Connor's RSI and then either of the fixed stop loss or the ATR, and whatever happened first, it will exit on. And then you could also select trailing stops that are fixed with a percentage, tick or pip, or an average true range trailing stop. And you can also even add in the move stop to break even if you like also. But you'll just have to test it down here and see how your results look. Okay, moving on to take profit. Take profit, we have a couple different ways. If you want to use Bollinger Bands or Keltner channels to take profit, you can do that. So you would just click Use Take Profit Indicator. And you'll see on the screen here, so let's look at a couple examples here. Okay, so let's find one where it's profitable. Here's a good example. Okay, we entered a trade here, and we exited the Bollinger. I believe it's Bollinger. Is it Keltner channel? Let me take a look. Okay, so the Keltner channel right now. So we exited the Keltner channel, so we took profit. And you can adjust your multipliers on them. And it'll be dynamic based on that. So we got a better exit with a much larger multiplier. You can change your length. If you want to use the Bollinger Band instead, you can do that. So that's how, if you want to use Bollinger Band or Keltner channels, how those work. You have to have these three selected. Now, if you want to use a percentage from entry instead, maybe, hey, just exit me if I get 10% of profit. You can do that. And here's our take profits from that. So 10% from here to here, we got exited out. You can even use it together with the Bollinger Bands or the Keltner channels, and whatever happens first is you'll be exited that way. So you can use them together or one or the other. One thing you do have to have, though, is you always have to have these use take profit on, whether you want to use this percentage from entry or the Bollinger Band or Keltner channels. With the percentage from entry, you can also do ticks or pips if you trade Forex or stocks too, or futures. If you don't want to use a fixed percentage from entry, you want to use maybe an average true range, you can do that also. So here's the settings for that. You can also use a Connor's RSI as a take profit. And the Connor's RSI you can use with the ATR, with the percentage from entry, or even with the Keltner channels and Bollinger Bands. You can use it together with all of those. It won't interfere with those. So whatever happens first is how you'll be exited. You can use it with percentage from entry at the same time also. So you can use them all together or each by themselves. You just can't use actually you can, I'm sorry, you can use them all together. You can just whatever happens first is where you'll be exited on. Now long entry filters, we also have short entry filters. And we have two of each, 2 long entry filters, 2 short entry filters. And if you want to filter your longs by RSI, stochastics, or EMA, you can do that. So for example, let's say you don't want to take any longs below 20 value on an RSI of 20 length. You can filter out your longs by that. Or you can go below. You can do the same thing with stochastics. Or if you want to only take longs if they're above, say, the 21 EMA, you can do that also. Or if you want to go above the 200 EMA, you can do that also. So a lot of flexibility here or below. You have to find what setting works for your trading strategy and try it out. So you have a second long entry filter if you want to use one maybe as a slower period, like a longer period, where this is looking at a quicker, faster period, and this is looking at a longer period. You can use them like that. Same thing with the short entry filters. They work the same exact way, except these will just filter your shorts instead of longs. You could use RSI, stochastics, or EMA. And then we have the long and short exit filters, and these are for if you don't want to exit a trade based on certain criteria. So if you don't want your longs, say, to exit, if they reach above, let's say, an RSI of 95, above 95 on a 10 length, and you don't want to exit just yet, you can have that be an exit filter. Same thing for the shorts. You could use EMA, stochastics, or RSI. For those, you can go above, below. So there's many different options here on how to use it. So that's how to use this for the Connors RSI and the standard rate of change. So all the stop loss, the market regimes, which we have a whole video on, just on market regimes. So whether you're using the market regimes to take profits, the stop losses, which are up here, to take profits, the long entry filters, short entry filters, or the long exits. You can use those both for the Connors RSI standard rate of change. This depends what indicator you choose as your trigger indicator, and then what setting you choose for either the standard rate of change, or if you're using the Connors RSI, whatever settings are down here for that. If you have any questions, feel free to contact us and ask us. We'd be happy to help, but that's how you use this as an example to create a trading system using the standard rate of change or the Connors RSI. Thank you.